Okay guys, welcome back. This is where we left off in our project, and we're able to visit a course and we're able to check if the user is learning. Now what I want to focus on is actually where we redirect the user when he clicks on this button. So remember, if this user has already started this series, then we are going to see a continue learning button. If the user has not yet started the series, we're going to see a start learning button like we are seeing right now. Remember, this is a new user we created. So before we jump into that, I'm going to go to my lesson test and I'm going to update my test a little. Right here, the test that says students can get next and previous lessons from a lesson. What I'm going to do is I'm going to update it such that the next lesson and previous lesson methods should actually never give us null. So they should always give us a lesson. So in case we are trying to get the next lesson for the last lesson in that series, it should just give us the lesson. And in case we are trying to get the previous lesson for the first lesson in that series, it should also just give us that same lesson. So how am I going to edit my assertions? Right here we are seeing assert null and assert null, but I'm going to change this to assert equals. And lesson 2 right here, just to update you, lesson 2 is actually the first series, the first lesson in that series. Lesson 1 is the second, and this is the last. Therefore, get previous lesson should actually give us null like it was doing. But now we are going to update it by saying lesson 2, which is the first. When we try to get the previous lesson, it should actually give us lesson 2. And I'm going to show you why I'm doing this right here. Okay, so the same thing for the next. So we're going to say assert equals lesson 3. We'll get the ID, and then we'll get lesson 3, and we'll get the ID. Okay, so if we run this test right now, sure, it's gonna fail. So PHP unit filter to this test, and it says try to get property of known object because obviously it's null. So we'll head over to our lesson.php, and for us to actually check if this is null, we're simply going to save it in the variable. So next lesson equals this, and right here what we'll do is simply have a check. If next lesson return next lesson. Okay, but if that check fails, then return this. Okay, so if there's no next lesson, then simply return the current lesson. Then we're going to go exactly the same thing right here for previous lesson. So previous lesson equals this, and if we have a previous lesson, which means it's not null or false value, would return previous lesson. Okay, else would simply return this, which means this lesson. Let's run our test, and now we're back to green. Now why am I doing this? If we head over to our learning.php, we have some methods that are dependent on the get next lesson. Okay, for example, this get next lesson to watch. Remember, if we are trying to get the next lesson to watch and the user has already completed that series, we don't want our website to break and tell us, okay, we can't find this lesson, or we can't be getting a property of null, but we actually want it to give us the last lesson of that series. Okay, so that's it. Now how do we use this method? Remember, we agreed if we head over to our watch series controller, right here in our index method, when the user clicks to watch a series, he's actually redirected to the first lesson of that series. But we don't want that. We want to check if the user has started the series, and if the user has started the series, we'll redirect him to the next lesson that he has to watch. For example, if he's watched lesson 1 and lesson 2, the next he should be watching is lesson 3. Okay, therefore we'll just save the authenticated user right here, and what we're going to do is check if user has started series, and we'll pass in the series. Then we're going to redirect the user somewhere else, and we'll redirect the user not to this lesson, which is the first lesson, but we are going to get user, and the name of that method we can get it from our learning.php, which is get next lesson to watch, and back into our watch series controller we'll say get next lesson to watch, and we'll pass in the series. Okay, so if the user has already started the series, it will redirect the user to this lesson, else it's going to redirect the user to the first lesson. Okay, so let's go ahead to our browser and check if this is working. So refresh, and by the way, let me show you my view right here. So we have our series.blade.php, and right here we have a continue learning check, a start learning. So if the user has started the series, we have continue learning, and if the user has not yet started, we have start learning. So we are locked in. That's why we see the start learning. If I click on start learning, it redirects me to the first lesson. So you see the current lesson now is the first lesson. What I'm gonna do is complete this series by simply playing that video, and now it's at the end. I'm gonna click OK. It redirects me to the second one, but now I want to head over back to that series, and we have continual learning. But now I will click on this, and you see that automatically redirects me to lesson 2. And that, I think, my friend, it's really profitable. Okay, you don't want to always go and select the next lesson that you stopped at the next time you log into our website. Okay, so I think that's very convenient. Let's just go ahead and complete this one for fun. Okay, we've completed this series. Then the next one is lesson 3. We haven't yet watched it. Let's head over back to that series, and then click on continue learning. Automatically we are redirected to the last lesson of the series because we've completed this one, and this is the one we have to watch next. Okay, so great. I think that works perfectly, just like we expected to.